Good morning, boys and girls. How are you guys doing today? Good morning to all our fourth graders. Just wanted to let you guys know that we are on our way to another trip, and I am welcoming you all today. We will embark with Kate. She will be our presenter again, and she will take you into a world where we're going to answer the question, where does electricity come from? So I hope that you guys are all ready. Um, to embark on this field trip with us. So we will start as soon as we are all ready. And here we are. Here is Kate from 2-Bit Circus, and she'll take it from here, boys and girls. Enjoy and have a great time.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria. Always such a great intro. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a lovely week since we last spoke, and I hope you had the opportunity to potentially see Monsters, Inc. for yourself. If not, no worries. I'm going to start off today with a video to help draw some parallels in between the Monsters universe and ours. So no fear, I'm going to share with you all the ad that I had in mind. Okie dokie. All right, so we'll get started with this first.
Monsters Incorporated.
Let's try that again so you can all hear it.
The future is bright at Monsters Incorporated. We power your car. We warm your home. We light your city.
I'm Monsters Incorporated.
Carefully matching every child to their ideal monster to produce superior screens, refined into clean, dependable energy. Every time you turn something on, Monsters Incorporated is there.
I'm Monsters Incorporated.
We know the challenge. The window of innocence is shrinking. Human kids are harder to scare.
Of course, MI is prepared for the future with the top scarers, the best refineries, and research into new energy techniques.
We're working for a better tomorrow. Today,
we're Monsters Incorporated.
Monsters Incorporated. We scare because we care.
All right, everyone. So I hope you all enjoyed that. I certainly did. Ooh, my goodness. Some technical difficulties just happened. That was definitely not supposed to happen. So as we saw right there, the monster world has Monsters, Inc. And what Monsters, Inc. is for them is a power company. And our real life example living down here in the SoCal area, specifically Los Angeles, we have SoCal Edison. They actually kind of have a monopoly of this area. But enough about that. Let's get onto the presentation today. Woohoo! Okie dokie. So, as I have welcomed you all already, this is going to be our week 2 together. We've got one more week of our chat about electricity and where it comes from. And what are some potential renewable resources? That's what we're going to get into next week. However, last week I explained to you what electricity was. It is a secondary energy source that needs a primary energy source, whether that be renewable or non-renewable source, such as fossil fuels or hydropower, solar power. Those all have to exist in order to create electricity, because if you didn't know, electricity is actually a man-made product, which means that it does not occur in nature naturally, besides lightning. But lightning is really, really hard to catch at the right time. So instead, what we have is electricity that we create based off of the primary source. So as we can see here with Mike, and he's reflecting as a disco ball, he's like, what is happening right now? How is this light happening? How's all this electricity coming through? Well, to tell you a little bit more, we've got Mike and his friends to let us know a little bit about Monsters, Inc. and the way that electricity works where they live. And as we all know from watching the film and that little clip that we saw earlier, these scream canisters are what holds the energy in order for the power company to power up the rest of Monstropolis. Well, how does that work? Well, this is Monsters Inc. This is their power plant, so every day monsters go here to work. And in the process of working there, they create electricity and a power source for the rest of their city because not everybody, because everybody else in the city needs access to electricity to turn on their lights, to get power to their devices, such as vacuums. There's all sorts of uses for electricity, as we all know. So in order to get the power, because remember, electricity is a secondary energy source, their primary energy source, as you can see here, are these doors. They are these scream canisters. So the monsters travel through these doors into our human world and scare the children living there. And in turn, they take that scream energy and turn it into power for the rest of Monstropolis. So let's break this down piece by piece. Monsters or scarers, just like Sully, go into the human world and scare a kid. That scream energy then gets put into one of these canisters by one of the helpful workers and partners, just like Mike in the film. Then where that goes is that they collect all the scream canisters and put them into a area where they hold all of their sources inside of the Monstropolis power building. Next, when anybody in Monstropolis turns anything on or plugs anything in, it immediately sends signals to the power company that they need electricity right at that moment. And that's what's inside of your switch. That millisecond decision or on off, when we were talking last week about the circuit and how it's a circle. So when your switches are off, it's an open circuit, remember? So an open circle, there is no energy being transferred anywhere. But when you turn something on, it actually closes the circuit, which means it closes the circle, which means there's energy that travels. So when you turn it on, you get power to your lights, to your vacuum, to your TV, to your radio. And that is the journey in order to come straight into your house. Well, we don't live in Monstropolis. That's very obvious. We live in the human world. So what is it that is similar in Monsters, Inc. to what we have here on Earth? Well, electricity, such as the kind that is created by CCA, procures clean energy sources. So they use solar power, they use wind power, it looks like they use hydropower as well because there's water right there. So they use all of those primary sources to create electricity banks. Then they deliver it to you. IOU delivers energy and maintains the grid. That is a power grid. Every city has a power grid, and there are multiple grids that exist in order to make sure that the power does not blow. Whenever a power grid blows, you get a complete power shutdown in a whole city or block sometimes. I don't know if you have ever dealt with one at your house, but have you ever been at home and then all of a sudden everything turns off? All of your lights, all of your devices, all of the clocks that are plugged in, everything turns off. Well, that's probably because somebody tripped the grid because there was too much power being used. Last but not least, once it's in the grid, it goes to the customer. So cleaner energy, there's local control, and for them, CCA in particular, they have competitive rates. So for my friends who are a little bit more word-driven, this will help you out a lot. This is how dependable electricity reaches you in our houses. So as I said, it starts at that power plant. That generating plant holds all of the power. Water is heated to steam using fuels such as natural gas, coal, and oil. And then the steam turns the turbines that in turn turn the generators to produce electrical energy. Then transformers at the generating plant increase the voltage up to 345,000 volts, my friends. So it can travel long distances over the transmission lines because we don't live close to our power plants. Most of the time we live very far away. So the energy has to get bumped up so that it can travel. So in addition to that, once it goes to the substation, it gets into high voltage transmission lines, and those lines carry the electricity over long distances. I actually live by some right by me, and I see them all the time, and they make this they make this very white noise humming sound. You can always kind of hear them. And then in between the high voltage transmission lines, there are extra transmission substations because they want to make sure that they can sustain high volume delivery over short distances. So all of this energy is getting diverted. Think of it like a spider chart almost, or a divergent chart. So it starts with one big piece of pie right up here. And then as the electricity travels, smaller pieces of the pie get broken off or cut into. So these substations are kind of like extra bakers that make in extra pieces of pie and like just slip it in last minute. That's a great analogy for them. Once it goes to that transmission substation, it goes to a large industrial user. So industries usually need anywhere from 2,400 to 4,160 volts to run their heavy machinery. They have their substation so that they can bump up the power. That then goes to the electricity then goes to a local distribution substation, which means that it's a substation that's closer to the houses or communities that need them. And a couple of the substations help to reduce electricity, helps the reduced electricity from bump up to anywhere from 7,200 to 14,400 volts for distribution to the individual businesses that are there. And then those small distribution lines are close to your house, and that is what gets your electricity to the individual places like schools, farms, houses, or small businesses. I know I used a lot of big words. So let me see if I can continue explaining to you in a way that makes sense in our modern world. So here is a map of the state of California. As you can see, we are very large and there are multiple major electric transmission lines throughout our whole state. And there are multiple different companies. But because we live in LA, I'm going to focus in on there. And as you can see, like I said before, right here in the center, it's very blue, which means that Southern California Edison, or SCE, is the power company that mainly distributes power down here in the LA area. If you go a little bit up more north, you'll see that Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, is actually the company that takes care of those areas, and so on and so forth. So ask your parents when you have time after school today, if your electric bill actually connects you to SoCal Edison. If not, what company do you belong to? Or do you generate your own energy at home? Do you have solar panels? Because those are always options as well. But we said before that electricity is a secondary source. It is not a main source of power. And we all know what a 2319 is. A 2319 is a panic situation. We might be in danger. And that's because we mainly use fossil fuels to generate most of our power. And that's a non-renewable source, my friends, which means we will run out eventually. But there is no need to panic here, like Sully and our friend who fell down. No. Because we do have the ability to get renewable resources. So guys, we need to calm down. It's going to be okay. At the end of Monsters, Inc., I should have said a spoiler alert, but we see that the monsters, when they're met with the crisis of the fact that kids are harder, energy isn't as sufficient, they explore laughter. And what they find out is laughter is not only 10 times more powerful than scream, but it's also easier to generate. And you find that everybody loves to go to work instead of dreading it or feeling bad. So at the end of it all, they create not only a better place for themselves, but their entire community through renewable resources. So I want you to all think, because we will be going on to that topic next week, about renewable resources. The monsters found laughter. What do we have? What can we innovate on to make those options even more efficient for us? Oh my goodness, I've got to pause my music. All right. So I hope you all enjoyed that presentation that I had for you. And I believe Miss Maria will come back on and we will have some questions. That's correct?
Yes, thank you, Kate. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed that and know that laughter can also create energy. So,
It
boys
can.
and
It's
girls,
more powerful, actually. It's better.
yes. Thank you, Kate. Thank you for that. And boys and girls, thank you for turning in your questions. We have some questions. And our first question is from our student from Pacific Boulevard, Kelly. And she is asking, if there is not too much energy, what would happen?
So, remember when I talked earlier, Kelly, about the power grids and how we might experience blackouts? So, that's what happens when too many people plug into the grid. So, the grid itself cannot get overcharged because, as we said, electricity is a secondary power source. So, it will never be as powerful as the original sources that created it, such as natural gas, hydroelectric, or wind. So the power plant itself cannot explode just because it has energy. It can explode, however, because of human error. So if somebody didn't make something correctly, or they didn't double check their work, or the container wasn't right, or something like that, then there it can cause some sort of power plant explosion. That has definitely happened before in the past to us, mainly to nuclear power plants, just because nuclear power is very, very fickle. It's very sensitive. However, you can blow your grid or even blow your power grid at home. That's why we have those large switches and panels that we have in our houses. And that's what we flip whenever we ask our house or even our city to provide too much energy. So say every outlet in your house, say there's 20 of them, and you are plugged a device into every single outlet. Well, that's 20 outlets that you've used. Think about everybody using all 20 of their outlets. Well, the power grid itself cannot sustain that kind of energy efficiently at the speed that it needs to. So instead of blowing out anybody else's individual electrical unit, kind of shuts down because it can't hold that much power. And then the electric company has to troubleshoot and take a different plan. And they always have contingency plans whenever it comes to blackouts. And at home, whenever you experience your house power going out, just your house alone, not your whole city, you can usually just go to the panel inside your house and flip a couple switches and reset the breaker, and that'll reset everything in your house. And usually I do suggest, if you find that you've tripped the power in your house, unplug whatever tripped the power in the first place so that it doesn't do it again when you try to reset your grid. But I hope that answered your question, Kelly. And thank you for your question today. What's next, Miss Maria?
Thank you for answering. Thank you, Miss Kate. So we have our next question, another fourth grade student from Walnut Park, Leslie. Leslie asks, how do you send energy to every single house in that moment? So she's curious about how we all can receive energy with just one switch from wherever it's coming from.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your question, Leslie. And you are talking about a point that we had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the transmission of electricity and the power grid. So, as I said before, and as I've explained, a circuit is a circle, correct? So, circuit, circle. And a closed circuit, like I'm making with my hands right now, is how electricity works when it comes to powering any device that you have. So when your circuit is closed, there's energy flowing here, there's neutral energy flowing out of the item, and that's how it powers it on. Your switch, however, creates an open circuit. So it has the ability to turn off the electrical needs that it has and turn it back on in a millisecond. That's how fast these devices can work and connect with each other. So how that works is that the power plant, however far away it is from you, creates energy in the first place. And then it goes through those substations, remember, where it gets more power so that when it travels, and because it travels and has to go all those distances, the energy just gets lessened. Like, for example, if you think about Running 50 meters, which is a short distance, is a lot easier than running a mile. So with that in mind, that's the same journey electricity takes, because it needs energy just like we do as humans, food, for example, in order to keep going, right? Like an Energizer bunny. So as the electricity travels, it starts losing some of that energy. So those substations we were talking about before amps up the energy into the power grid so that everybody can get the same amount of electricity that they have paid for, as well as in the short amount of time that it needs to get generated there. So the national grid is what we call it. And the national grid is essential to energy generation because the national grid guarantees that both electricity and gas are transported safely. Not only do we need it, but we need it to travel safely, because we don't want people accidentally getting electrocuted or accidentally inhaling natural gas. That's why natural gas leaks are dangerous to humans. We don't want any of that happening. So this national grid keeps that in mind. And the purpose of it is to get the heat, light, and power that customers need into their different homes, because we don't live all together. We all have different businesses, we all live in different places, but we still need the same amount of energy. However, as significant as the grid is, it also has to keep up with the increasing demand in the future, because people are born and more people are still here, they have to have more places to live. So that means more energy needs to get sucked up because there's more people there. So these electricians and electrical companies always have to be on the cutting edge of innovation because they have to compensate for that problem. And just so you know, about 40% of the energy from all energy resources is used to generate electricity. That's right, 40% of all the energy that we collect is used to generate just electricity. And that's more than any other single-use purpose that we have in this country. So, from a technical and scientific understanding, we understand that energy allows us to generate, transmit, and use electricity to heat our homes, charge our phones, light streets, and so many other things. And it gets to our houses in those 3 stages of generation, transmission, and then distribution. And hopefully that answered your question a little better. Thank you so much again for sharing and for asking it. I hope that was a good answer, Miss Maria. I know I say a lot of words.
It was very thorough, Miss Kate. Thank you so much for that answer. Now we do have another question, and this one was from our student from Hamasaki Elementary, East Lali. And her question was, and you probably already touched a little bit on it, but how does let me read it correctly, sorry. How does dimming the lights work?
Got you. Okay, so this question in particular is not in reference to the electrical system itself, but actually a device. So we're going to get a little bit nitty-gritty into some finer details about a very specific device. So what I'm saying next, my friends, is talking about dimmers and not about the actual electrical system itself. So keep that in mind. Electricity is electricity. We, as consumers, have no way of, besides the devices that we use, every device takes a different amount of voltage. And after you add up that amount of voltage, you get a grand total of how much electricity you are using in your house. And usually, because we love our planet and we want it to stay here for many, many more generations, we want to keep that number relatively low. That's why we have energy efficient light bulbs, devices, choices. That's why these things exist, is because we realized we were paying too much for electricity and we didn't want to, but we didn't want to sacrifice in any of these comforts that we had created for ourselves, such as bright lights, such as these cell phones. We just had to make them more efficient as devices themselves. So we are talking specifically about dimmers, correct? Well, I have a dimmer in my bedroom. I dropped something, pardon me. So I'm going to draw an example for you, and please follow along if this makes it easier for you to understand. So a dimmer light switch looks like any other light switch typically, correct? It's got that usual light plate that exists on the wall to protect all those awesome insides and wires in here that really you never see unless you're changing out either your light switch plate or your electrician is coming in to fix something. So it doesn't have the typical on-off switch like you usually see, where it's a little, I don't know what to call this. I wish I knew what the name was, but the switch, the on-off switch with the little click, it goes click, click. That's not what our dimmer switch is. That's just a regular switch because all it does is open and close that circuit we were talking about earlier. And that's the only way that electricity can travel. A dimmer, on the other hand, does have a click switch. I wish I had researched what that name was so I could speak a little bit more eloquently, but it's okay. So it usually has that light switch where it's a little bit of more of a push. So it goes click, click again. But on the side, I don't know for you guys, but on the side, what I have right here, oh my goodness, it's so hard to draw vertically. Right here on the side of it is this little panel. And usually my button lives right up at the top because I want it on the brightest setting in my bedroom because my bedroom's windows actually face north and south. So I don't get a lot of sunlight because the sun, as we all know, rises and sets in the east and west direction. So this dimmer on the side, this little bar that you see that you can move up and down relatively slowly is what controls the dimmer. So this on-off switch is what controls the circuit itself. So this either opens or closes the circuit. The dimmer on the side is an extra control that controls the amount of voltage. That's the unit that electricity runs in. Voltage that comes through into your X amount, a total like cap amount that it can be. That's the brightest it can be. That's the max amount of voltage it can take in. So that's all the way at the top up here. And then as you slowly move the bar down, all the way at the bottom is pitch dark, by the way, you are decreasing the amount of voltage or the amount of electricity that is getting sucked up by your light bulbs. And that is what causes the dimming sensation. You're not cutting out any electricity of any source. It's actually the device itself is controlling how much voltage goes through to your lights, which is either controlled by the amount of, as I said, the voltage that goes through or the speed that it travels to your lights. Because very rarely, unless it's a lamp or a ring light like I have right here, the switch or button of the light fixture is usually very far away from the light bulb itself. So those would be the two ways to either it controls the amount of voltage that goes through, or it controls the speed that the electricity travels, which also cuts down on the brightness. Yes. I hope that was a good answer to your question. Thank you again. And thank you, Miss Maria. Do we have time for more, or are we wrapped for the day?
We will just do one more and then I think we'll wrap it up for the day. And thank you for that explanation, boys and girls. As you could see, we do have to put connectors and different stuff to be able to get the electricity. So thank you for your explanation and your drawing, Miss Kate. Yay. So our last question is from Mayowa from Lillian Street Elementary. And I figured this would be a good wrap up. Yeah. She asked, can we always rely on electricity?
No, we can't. We cannot. Because as I said, it's a man-made energy source. So if we're not here or the people to make it aren't here, then we can't rely on it, right? And as we know, humans are not perfect. We're not meant to be. So because it's man-made, it's not a perfect science. It's not a perfect energy source. It's non-renewable because it needs a source, a primary source of energy to be able to exist. Like I said, we still have, it's 2020 and we still have blackouts when it comes to energy. There are times where we still have to pull out our flashlights, our candles, hand crank radios. Those are still real things that we are dealing with today. So no, we cannot rely on electricity. The only thing we can rely on currently is the wind, the sun, and the water. And that, even though it is considered a renewable resources, that can also change because as we know, the sun is a star And every star eventually runs out of energy. Every star burns out. So there will be some day where the sun will no longer exist, which is sad, but it's true. So once the sun doesn't exist anymore, then the patterns of weather, such as wind and water, since water is controlled by the moon, as we know scientifically, there's some tidal controls that can happen with the different phases of the moon. That will get affected as well, because the moon does rely on the sun, and the sun is our center of gravity as well. That's what holds us all together in our solar system. So my big answer, even though I've broken it down on all these little things, and I'm talking about ideas that we're exploring on Monday. So the next time you'll see me and I'll see you, we're going to be discussing more about this. But no, electricity is not something we need to rely on. It's something we cannot rely on. So what I am relying on, and I think what Miss Maria is relying on, is the next generation, just like all of you, creating a reliable electrical source or a power source like that, something that we can all use to power these lights we have, to power our cell phones that maybe aren't electric. And maybe it's you. It's one of you who will create that. And I can't wait to see that.
Thank you, Miss Kate. Yes, I am sure we have many, many, many students who are inventors and creators, and we can't wait to see that, boys and girls, because you guys are a next generation that will create stuff for us and take care of us. So with that, Miss Kate, I thank you very, very much for taking us on this trip again and bringing Monsters Inc. as one of them. And we'll end with laughter and cheer, because that was one way that they created energy within themselves. And looking forward to Monday, boys and girls, our trip will be Monday, like Miss Kate said. And Monday, we're going to be talking about the alternative sources of energy. So hope to see you all there, boys and girls. And this video will still be live if you guys want to go back on. I mean, I'm sorry, on the YouTube channel, it'll be recorded for later. And thank you, Miss Kate. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you all so much for having me today. And my only homework to you, and you don't have to write it down, is think about renewable resources. Think about, all know our usual ones, but what is something that you can think of that we might be able to power? And maybe put that in the questions. Maybe we can all muse together about a car run on tea. Who knows? That might be a great idea. I'd love to explore it with all of you. But thank you again, everyone. It was such a pleasure. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will see you all on Monday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Kate. Okay,
Bye.
boys and girls and teachers, now you guys go back into your classroom. Bye, Kate. Thank you.